I came to my son's graduation holding flowers. My ex-husband's new wife looked me up and down and said, "That seat is for real family." She had no idea what was coming. The white lilies were still damp from the grocery store cooler. I know that's a strange detail to remember, but that's the thing about the moments that break you open. You don't remember the big things first. You remember the cold water on your fingertips, the way the plastic wrapping crinkled when you held the bouquet too tight, the $7 price tag you peeled off in the parking lot because you didn't want Daniel to see it. I had been standing outside Jefferson High's main auditorium for 6 minutes. I checked my watch twice because I wanted to time my entrance just right. Not too early, not too late. I wanted to slip in, find my seat, breathe. The seat my son had reserved for me himself. The text was still on my phone. "Mom, front row center, seat 4A. I put your name on the back myself. I want the first face I see when I walk through those doors to be yours. Please be there." I'd read it 11 times since Tuesday. I was wearing the blue dress, the one I bought at the consignment shop on Meridian for $20 and had dry cleaned twice because I wanted it to be perfect. I'd done my hair in the bathroom mirror at 5 a.m. That morning, alone in the apartment I'd rented for the past 4 years, the one with the crooked kitchen cabinet and the radiator that banged like a fist in February, I'd pressed the dress the night before, steamed the collar, found the only pair of heels I owned that didn't give me blisters. I wanted to look like a woman who had made it, because we had. I pushed open the auditorium door and walked straight into the worst moment of the last 18 years. Let me back up, because if I start with Vanessa Hargrove Brooks standing in the middle of that aisle with her silk blouse and her diamond studs and her voice like a closing door, you won't understand why it almost worked, why I almost let it. Richard and I were married for 11 years. We divorced when Daniel was 7. It wasn't dramatic in the way divorces sometimes are. No screaming, no thrown dishes. It was quieter than that, and somehow worse. Richard had a gift for making you feel like your pain was an overreaction, like your needs were a kind of greed. When I asked for child support, his lawyer, a man named Gerald Pruitt from a firm downtown, sent me a letter explaining that Richard's fluctuating income made consistent payment structurally inadvisable. I was working the lunch shift at a diner off Route 9 at the time. Daniel was in 2nd grade. He had a backpack with a broken zipper I'd fixed 3 times with electrical tape. I signed a settlement that wasn't fair. I knew it wasn't fair, but I was 29 years old with a 2nd grade son and no college degree, and Gerald Pruitt had a suit that cost more than my car. So I started over. I started small, a food cart. I'd watched my grandmother cook her whole life, and her tamales were the thing people in our family talked about when they talked about being loved, so I got a permit. Bought a used steam cart from a man in Garfield who was retiring. Set up outside the Riverside Medical Clinic on weekday mornings because hospital workers start their shifts at 6 a.m. and they're hungry and grateful, and they tip well. For 3 years, I woke up at 4 a.m. every morning, including Sundays. My hands have burns on them, not dramatic ones. Small white scars along the inside of my right palm, where steam gets you when you're moving fast and it's cold out and you're trying to serve 12 people at once. I used to be embarrassed by them. Now I think of them as evidence. Daniel grew up watching me work. He did his homework at the folding table next to the cart during summer breaks. He learned to make change before he learned long division. By the time he was 14, he was helping me on weekends, and he was better with the customers than I was. He had this warmth, this way of remembering people's names after one meeting that I never had the energy for. Richard, meanwhile, had remarried. Vanessa Hargrove, daughter of a commercial real estate developer, former marketing director, a woman who wore linen in October and made it look intentional. She had 2 daughters from a previous marriage, Sienna and Brooke, who were 11 and 13, and who I'd met twice at custody exchanges, and both times looked right through me. Richard moved into Vanessa's house in Thornton Heights. It had a pool. Daniel spent every other weekend there as required by the custody agreement. He never complained about it to me, which I respected, but there were signs. When he came home at 15 and told me very carefully that Vanessa had suggested he consider community college as a realistic path, I saw his jaw do the thing it does. That tightening, like he's deciding not to say what he's actually thinking. "What do you think?" I asked him. "I think," he said, "that I'm going to prove her wrong." He did. Daniel Carter Brooks graduated first in his class with a 4.1 GPA, full academic scholarship to Whitmore University, a school with a 14% acceptance rate in case Vanessa wanted the number. He'd been accepted to 3 other schools as well. He chose Whitmore because they had the best biomedical engineering program in the state. My kid. The same kid I'd once carried on my back through a February sleet storm because the bus didn't run after 9 p.m. and we'd stayed too late at the library and he refused to leave before he finished his chapter. That kid. The auditorium at Jefferson High holds about 400 people. It's a nice building. They renovated it 6 years ago. New seats, good acoustics, the kind of place that makes events feel like they matter. I walked in at 9:48 a.m. Ceremony started at 10. The room was maybe 2/3 full, people still filing in, ushers in burgundy vests directing traffic. I had the lilies in my left hand and my phone in my right, and I was looking for 4A. The front section was filling fast. I could see the reserved placard at the end of the row. I could see the little white cards on the seat backs. I could see Vanessa sitting in seat 4A. She was turned sideways, talking to someone I didn't recognize, laughing at something with her mouth wide open. Sienna was next to her, already on her phone. Brooke was on the other side. Richard was 1 seat over, in 4B, the seat that had been reserved for. I checked the text again. Daniel's +1 guest, which Daniel had told me privately was just a buffer seat. The seat with my name on it was occupied. I walked to the end of the row, stood there, waited. Vanessa finished her sentence, laughed once more, and then, slowly, like she was granting an audience, turned to look at me. She looked me up and down, twice. The way you look at something that's in the wrong place. Can I help you? That's my seat, I said. I kept my voice level. I had a lot of practice keeping my voice level. Seat 4A. My son reserved it. My name is on the card. She glanced at the seat back. My name was there. Elena Brooks. On a small white card, bent at one corner, slightly ripped, like someone had tried to remove it and stopped. Oh, she turned back forward. Ma'am, these seats are for real family. You can stand in the back. I heard the words enter me. I felt them in a specific place, somewhere below the sternum, the place where humiliation lives before it becomes rage. I'm his mother, I said, and Richard is his father, and this is our family section. She still wasn't looking at me. Daniel is sweet, but he's 18. Richard arranged the seating. These are the people who matter here today. Richard was 3 feet away. He was staring at the stage, at nothing, with the focused attention of a man who has decided that what is happening near him is not, technically, happening to him. An usher appeared at my elbow. Young guy, maybe 22. Apologetic eyes, tight shoulders. Ma'am, is there an issue? Could you maybe clear the aisle? I looked at the lilies in my hand. I thought about the text on my phone. I thought about the dry-cleaned dress, and the 4 a.m. mornings, and the steam burns on my palm. I thought about Daniel in his cap and gown somewhere behind those side doors, maybe pacing, maybe nervous, practicing the speech he'd been working on for 6 weeks. This was his day. So I didn't say what I wanted to say. I didn't say anything. I walked to the back. The back of the auditorium was a different world. Folding chairs had been set up along the rear wall for the overflow crowd, but most were already taken. I found a space near the exit doors, where 2 industrial fans were running to compensate for the hall's insufficient air conditioning. The sound echoed differently back there. The PA system had a slight crackling delay, like listening to music from the next room. A few people glanced at me when I arrived. Most looked away. I pressed the lilies against my chest and stared at the stage and breathed through my nose and told myself it was fine. It was not fine. I'm not going to pretend it was. Standing at the back of your son's graduation ceremony, in a dry-cleaned dress with hold lilies in your arms, while your ex-husband's wife sits in the seat your son reserved for you, that is not fine. That is one of the most specific kinds of terrible there is. I thought about texting Daniel to warn him, but his phone would be off. They always made them turn their phones off before processional. And what would I even say? Don't worry about me. Be happy. I'm fine. I was saved from that decision by the music. The opening notes of Pomp and Circumstance started through the PA, and then the side doors opened and the graduates filed in. They came in pairs, alphabetically, and I found myself doing the math automatically. B's come early. Brooks, there, Daniel. He walked through those doors in a dark blue gown with a gold honor cord and a gold medal swinging at his chest. The Academic Excellence Award, which I'd watched him receive at a smaller ceremony 3 weeks prior and cried through entirely. He was tall. He'd gotten Richard's height and my stubbornness, which I'd always thought was a workable combination. His eyes went immediately to the front row. Richard raised his hand, the gesture of a man welcoming his own reflection. Vanessa smiled with the part of her face that faces cameras. Daniel's expression didn't change. His eyes kept moving, scanning left, scanning right. I watched his face from 50 feet away with the particular precision of a woman who has been reading that face since it was 3 hours old, and I saw the moment he realized I wasn't in 4A. Jaw tight, a single breath through the nose. Then he kept moving with the processional, because he had to, and I kept standing, because I had to, and we were both pretending to be fine from opposite ends of the same room. I want to pause here and tell you something about Daniel, because I need you to understand what happened next. When Daniel was 9 years old, Richard promised to come to his birthday party, a Saturday afternoon at the municipal park. Nothing elaborate. I'd made a chocolate cake from scratch. I'd invited 7 kids from his class. Daniel had talked about it for 2 weeks. Richard didn't come. He sent a gift card. Daniel was very quiet that afternoon. He ate his cake. He played with his friends. He didn't cry, which made it worse somehow. When everyone left and I was cleaning up, he found me in the kitchen and he said, with the flat delivery of a child who has decided that feelings are inefficient, he wasn't going to come anyway. I knew that. I asked him how he knew. He looked at his phone when he promised, Daniel said. People who mean things don't look at their phones when they say them. He was 9. I sat on the kitchen floor that night after he went to bed and cried for 40 minutes. Not because Richard hadn't come, because my son had already learned to protect himself from his own father. That was the first time I saw the jaw thing. The ceremony proceeded. Principal Karen Okwosa, 22 years in education, a woman who ran Jefferson High like a ship and was beloved for it, gave the opening remarks. The school board president, a man named Howard Fells, said some things about futures and possibilities. Parents cried. The fans kept running near my exit door. Then Principal Okwosa stepped back to the microphone. It is my profound honor, she said, to introduce this year's class valedictorian, a student who arrived at Jefferson High as a quiet freshman and leaves it as someone none of us will forget. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Daniel Carter Brooks. The room erupted. Richard stood up, literally stood up, chest out, like he was being recognized. Vanessa started recording on her phone. Daniel walked to the podium. He was calm. He always looked calm. It was the thing that made people underestimate him until they didn't anymore. He reached into his gown and removed a folded sheet of paper. His speech. He'd shown me a draft 2 weeks ago. It was good, measured, the kind of speech speech that would have pleased everyone and offended no one. About ambition, about community, about the teachers who believed in him. He looked at it for a long moment, then he folded it up, tucked it back inside his gown. He lifted the microphone with both hands and looked out at the room. I had a speech about success, he said, but I saw something a few minutes ago that changed my mind. The room quieted. My mother is standing at the back of this auditorium. Every head turned, 400 pairs of eyes swiveling toward the rear wall, toward the exit doors and the loud fans, toward the woman in the blue dress holding white lilies, me. Not because she was late, Daniel said. Not because she forgot. She's standing there because someone removed her name from the seat I reserved for her. The seat in the front row that I specifically saved so that the first face I'd see when I walked through those doors would be hers. The whispers started immediately. A wave, front to back like wind through grass. Vanessa's phone dropped to her lap. Richard's face, I could see it from where I stood, went through about 4 colors in 10 seconds. Pale, pink, red. A kind of raw, mortified red that I hadn't seen on him since the time, 12 years ago, that a mutual friend accidentally forwarded his group text to me. Success is a complicated word, Daniel continued. His voice was steady, completely steady. We talk about it like it's a finish line, like it's a GPA or a medal or a scholarship or a house in Thornton Heights with a pool, a beat. But that's not what I think about when I think about how I got here. He paused. I think about a woman waking up at 4 in the morning, every morning, to stand outside a medical clinic in February and steam tamales with burned hands so her kid could buy textbooks, so her kid could take the SAT prep course, so her kid could afford the application fees for schools that don't care how early your mother wakes up, only how high your score is. There were mothers in the crowd who were already crying. I could hear them. I was shaking. I realized that only when I felt the lilies trembling against my chest, the plastic wrapper crinkling. When I was 9, Daniel said, I needed emergency surgery, appendix. My mother was told it would cost $3,200 out of pocket before insurance processed the claim. She called my father. He said he couldn't afford it. The room was silent in the way that only happens when everyone in it is trying not to make a sound. She sold her grandmother's necklace that afternoon, the one she'd kept in a velvet box in her closet for as long as I could remember, a gold chain with a small cross. She sold it to a pawn shop on Western Avenue for $800, took out the rest from a payday loan at 22% interest, and she paid the hospital by 5 o'clock. He looked directly at Richard. My father posted beach photos from Miami 4 days later. Silence. Crushing. Absolute silence. I watched Richard in his seat. He wasn't looking at the stage anymore. He was looking at the floor. When I was 13, Daniel continued, I competed at the state math championship. It was a Saturday. My mom closed her food stand for the day, lost a full day of income, which for us at the time was real money, and she sat in the bleachers of Westfield High for 4 hours to watch me compete. He paused again. I asked my dad to come. He said he'd try. He texted me 2 days after the competition to ask how it went. The whispers were gone now. No one was whispering. No one was shifting in their seats. The kind of attention Daniel had was the kind you can't buy. I won, by the way, he said. Dry. Quiet. A few people laughed, the kind of laugh that comes out of tension. Then, I told my mom I won, and she cried in the parking lot for 15 minutes and then bought us drive-through to celebrate. More crying in the crowd. I was one of them, finally, despite myself. I'm not telling you these things to embarrass anyone. He paused. Well, maybe a little. Another involuntary laugh from the audience. I'm telling you because I think we lie to people about what success costs. We show them the medal. We don't show them the burned hands. We show them the scholarship announcement. We don't show them the pawn shop receipt. He looked back out at the room, and then Vanessa stood up. She didn't raise her hand. She didn't ask to speak. She simply stood up in the middle of the front row, in the middle of a graduation ceremony, and said in a carrying voice, "This is manipulative. His mother loves playing the victim. She's been doing it for years." 400 people heard every word. I watched it happen from the back of the room like I was watching something fall in slow motion, knowing there was nothing to be done. Daniel looked at her, a long, measured look. Victims suffer in silence, he said. My mother never stopped fighting. She just never fought dirty. Principal Okwosa was already off the stage. She walked down the stairs with the deliberate calm of a woman who has handled parents, students, board members, and crises for 22 years and has run out of patience for exactly this kind of moment. She stopped in front of Vanessa in the front row. Her voice was quiet, clear. Ma'am, Vanessa stood her ground. I didn't do anything wrong. This is an attack on our family. You removed a mother's name from her son's graduation seat. Principal Okwosa's voice could have cut glass. In my building, at my ceremony, you will move. Now. I didn't remove anything. I just, now. The whole room watched. Vanessa grabbed her purse. Her jaw was tight. The expensive, maintained jaw of a woman who has never had to accept a public consequence in her adult life and doesn't know what her face is supposed to do. Sienna and Brooke scrambled to their feet beside her, whispering. The three of them moved toward the side aisle. Richard didn't move. He didn't follow his wife. He didn't stand up in her defense. He just sat there in seat 4B, pale and still, hands on his thighs, with the expression of a man watching water rise and calculating, too late, how long he has before it reaches his chin. Principal Okuwosa turned toward the rear of the auditorium. She looked straight at me. She nodded. I have walked down a lot of difficult aisles in my life. I walked down an aisle toward Richard at 24, in a church in my mother's hometown, believing in things I would spend the next decade unlearning. I walked down the hospital corridor the night Daniel's appendix ruptured, with nothing in my wallet and a velvet box in my purse and a terror so complete it felt like weather. I have walked into lawyers' offices and government offices and early morning parking lots in February darkness more times than I can count. This was different. Every step felt like something being undone. Like layers of, okay, I'll manage, it's fine. I'll stand in the back being peeled away, one step at a time, down that center aisle. People were watching me, not with cruelty the way they'd watched Vanessa, with something softer and harder at the same time. Recognition, maybe. The particular attention that an audience pays to someone receiving a thing they have watched them be denied. I reached the front row. The usher, the same young man from before, was standing at the end of the row with his hands folded, his face somewhere between relief and remorse. I looked at seat 4A. My name was still on the back. Elena Brooks. Wrinkled. One corner bent. Slightly torn. But there. I sat down. The applause started slowly. It wasn't the kind that erupts. It built. Like weather. Like a wave reaching a shore. Heavy and measured and real. I pressed the lilies against my chest and looked up at my son at the podium. He was watching me. His face. That face I have been reading for 18 years. The one that tightened at 9 years old in a park when a promise was broken. Was doing something I don't have a precise word for. It was open. The rest of the ceremony proceeded the way they do. Names called, diplomas handed, photos taken, parents crying. Richard sat in his seat the entire time. I don't know what his face looked like. I didn't look at him. I thought about the necklace, the cross on the gold chain. I'd thought about it periodically for 9 years, whether it was still in that pawn shop, whether it had been melted down, whether someone was wearing it who didn't know its story. The woman at the counter had given me $800 for it, cash, and I'd taken the money without letting myself think about what I was doing because if I thought about it, I would stop. I thought about it now, and I found, somewhat to my surprise, that the thought didn't hurt anymore. I had gotten something for it. It was right in front of me, in a dark blue gown with a gold medal, walking across a stage. After the ceremony, when the graduates were released to find their families, Daniel didn't go to the front row first. He came straight to the back. Then he found me. I'd stayed in my seat, and he walked down that aisle in the opposite direction from the way I'd walked it, through the remaining crowd, past the fold-up chairs and the fans that were still running, and he stood in front of me. He took the diploma from under his arm, held it out with both hands. "This belongs to you too," he said. "Daniel, I mean it." I took it, looked at it. Daniel Carter Brooks, magna cum laude, the gold seal and the principal's signature and the date. "You earned this," I said. "You did. We earned it." He said it the way he says things he has decided. Final. I did the school part, you did the rest. We held it between us for a moment, then he looked over his shoulder, back toward the front row. Richard was still there. He hadn't gotten up. The people around him had cleared out, chairs empty, programs left on seats, and he was just sitting in 4B with his elbows on his knees, looking at the stage. Daniel watched him for a moment, then he straightened up. "When I start at Whitmore in the fall," he said, and his voice was clear and quiet and conversational, as if he were commenting on the weather. "I'm going to be using your last name." He said it loud enough. I looked up at him. "Daniel, Mom." He met my eyes. "I've been thinking about it for 2 years." I heard Richard move. "Daniel," Richard's voice from the front row. Careful, calibrated. The voice he used when he was about to do the thing where he sounds reasonable while saying unreasonable things. Daniel turned to look at him. "I already filed the paperwork, Dad." He said it without heat, without performance. "It was finalized this morning." Richard opened his mouth. Daniel looked at him for a long moment. This boy who had learned at 9 years old that people who mean things don't look at their phones when they say them. And then he turned back to me. "Come on," he said. "I want a photo with the flowers." 3 months later, Daniel is at Whitmore. He called me last Sunday from his dorm room. He'd gotten a 94 on his first engineering exam and was complaining about his roommate's music taste. He sounded exactly like himself. The morning after the ceremony, my phone had 43 new contacts. Parents from the audience who'd gotten my number from other parents who'd gotten it from someone else. 7 of them became regular customers. One of them, a woman named Dr. Patricia Nwosu, a pediatrician at Riverside Medical of all places, helped me with the small business loan application I'd been putting off for 2 years. The cart is a proper catering operation now, with a website and a weekend farmer's market spot, and a waiting list for corporate events. My hands still have the burns. I don't think they'll ever fully go away, but I stopped being embarrassed by them a long time ago. Now when I look at them, I think, evidence. Richard tried to call Daniel twice in the weeks after graduation. Daniel texted back both times. I don't know what was said. That's Daniel's business, and I have always tried, not always successfully, but consistently, to keep it that way. Vanessa Hargrove Brooks has, from what I understand, not attended any events at Jefferson High since the ceremony. Her daughters are still enrolled. I hope they're okay. I genuinely do. None of this was about them. There's a voicemail on my phone that I've listened to 4 times. Daniel sent it the night he got to campus, walking across the quad for the first time, rambling about the buildings and the trees and his schedule. He's talking, and then he goes quiet for a second and says, "Mom, I just want you to know, you're the reason I'm here. All of it. I know you know that, but I wanted to say it out loud somewhere. I don't delete it. I don't think I ever will."